Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hi there, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 33 of Cognitive. Welcome back. Special warm welcome back to my buddy Chris H. in the warm thanks department, who sent me a very generous coffee. It's nice to have you back too. I'm out here doing the unthinkable. I'm roaming free. I'm sitting in front of a Starbucks recording because I can use the Wi-Fi to read my notes. And I'm just watching people come and go at a strip mall. And it's just a beautiful thing to do. And it's been a little bit emotional. I went into our favorite sushi bar by myself, which was an old ritual of mine that my husband does not participate in. I don't know how aware of it he is. And it was very emotional. Everybody was very sweet, and everybody was saying, "Oh, we're so glad to see you. We're so glad to see you." Here in California, we're unmasked if we are vaccinated. Now, that's not really true in terms of me. If I think there's kids under the age of 12, I'm masked. And in the restaurant, they were all masked, and they're required to be. And I felt it was a return of consideration, so I stayed masked most of the time there. I just went into Starbucks again. They're all masked. They have to be, so I kept my mask on. Because after all, your mask is there to protect other people from you. And I learned back in September of 2020, when I took my Ventura vacation, how helpless this one woman in a Menchie's frozen yogurt place was, that she was observing all the rules and people kept coming in and exposing her by refusing to observe the rules. And this really matters to me, that poor woman was clearly so trapped in that ice cream place. You think about a minimum wage worker, and she just can't get away, that the boss is saying, you have to do this, you have to be exposed, you have to take this risk. If people come in without masks and you throw them out, you might be in serious trouble. And I don't know if I can ever forget that, about how helpless and exposed and defenseless the wait staff at various places must feel. At any rate, I went into Starbucks, and they were all emotional. They recognized me, and they said, "Oh, it's so great to see you again. We don't think we've seen you since before COVID." And I was so surprised they remembered me. And there was nobody else in Starbucks, so we all made a big deal. And it was lovely. So now I'm sitting in their parking lot using their Wi-Fi. There is one person sitting in the cafe there, all by himself without a mask. I'm not really ready to do that. But I'm sitting in the space between the Starbucks and my sushi joint, and we'll see how long I make it here in the heat. But it's lovely. I'm sitting with my windows open because I think the air conditioning sound would be too loud for you to hear me talk. And those of you who were along for the original Cognitive podcast, that's quite a departure, eh? That I'm actually worried about noise. Yeah, well, I'm 12 years older and I don't know, a little more settled. So, let us see. Well, I got through the warm thanks. Thanks again, Chris H. So we're on to what's on my hooks and needles. The really pretty socks. Hooray, I'm on the toe decreases of the first sock. I thought that would never happen because I have really, really reduced my knitting time because I'm spinning like a maniac. But it's lovely. These are beautiful socks. And when I recently tossed my stash, I realized I have enough sock yarn for years to come if I knit a pair every month. So I'm really enjoying going through old stash. That's kind of important because when I'm talking about yarns and such, you're going to have to remember these are old stash, because some things have very much changed in the yarny world. For one thing, one major manufacturer moved their factory out of America, which now I feel a lot less good about buying from them. Actually, I don't feel good about buying from them, to be honest. That at a time like this, taking away American jobs isn't making me happy. And, well, a lot of the people I'm using, whose yarn and fiber I'm using, are no longer in business. It's really quite odd. So when you hear me not recommending, it's usually because of issues like this. I think most of the time, since I'm deep stash diving, they're just not around anymore. But I wanted to say that because you may hear me talking about yarn brands that just don't exist. Well, that lets me explain the Wild Lettuce shawl. Still haven't finished it. Still haven't really worked on it. Twin Faces vest is in transit. I am thinking she held it up and the back part of it, when she pulled it over her chest, sagged a little bit. So I'm going to probably take it in another inch or two, but not a lot. It fits her hips, and I keep telling her that this isn't meant to be tapered or fitted. This is just meant to be a column, as will be her next project, which is the Christmas present, I hope, in the beautiful cerveza yarn, which is Malabrigo Rios. Okay, so that is on its way to me. And I'm really struggling not to just start her next sweater because I sort of know where it's going to be now that I've seen her try on the vest. The temperature blanket is the really exciting news. It's gorgeous because we're in a heat wave. I think you'd have to be under a rock right now not to know that there's wild flooding in the south and a wild heat wave in the west and southwest. We're actually coming through it. Today, Yahoo is only in the 90s as I sit here. Up at the farm, it's only in the high 80s, which is very bearable. It's also orange on the temperature blanket. The 90s, did I get that right? No, in fact, the 80s are caution, which is an orange-yellow. The 90s, which we got into, are orange. And yes, we got into the hundreds for one day up on the farm, more than one day in the village of Acton, but we're up on the mountainside. So I have one stripe now, count them, one, of a color called Rouge, which is a very bright, cheerful pink red. It didn't at all look right to me coming after the orange, but yet when I crocheted it in, it looks great. So if you look at the picture in the notes, it's really quite amazing. It was sort of half folded on a box that contains all its yarn. And I looked at it and said, that's awfully pretty, and just took the picture as is because you can see so many of the colors. In fact, actually, I think you can see all of the colors. What's so strange about it is now that I look at it, I can interpret it. And so when I look at it, what I see is one stripe of rouge surrounded by bars of orange, which are the 90 degrees. And then it goes from actually canary to orange. So it actually jumped from the 70s to the 90s without any caution. And below that, below the 70s, you can see the color that is a yellow-green that is for the 60s. What's that called? I think that's called Tranquil. Anyway, it is really strange to see how temperatures jump here. They don't just go gradually, and you can really see that in the blanket. The roving rug number 2 is still sitting on our bathroom floor pretending to be finished. It isn't. I have the churro fiber that is going to be its next stripe, and I am pretty sure that will finish it. And that's probably maybe 1 to 2 days of really committed crocheting with a very heavy hook, a P hook as in perfect. I was eyeing the Outpost sweater. I was eyeing another Agnes, but I'm probably going to skip right on to Twin Faces sweater, which is probably going to be a brick. What else now? Yes, well, Lisa Souza, if you're following her website, the link is in the show notes, and the show notes, of course, are at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or on the Ravelry group. Lisa has been introducing lots of colors of fiber, so if you are spinning like I am spinning, and I am spinning like there's no tomorrow, I say go over there and have a look. I'm really fighting the urge because I'm trying to work through my spinning stash, which does lead me into Dizzy Blondes. And Dizzy Blondes, you can see the pictures. I've been in a long-term project working on a few things. I had, you may remember, the Silk Yak gradient. Oh, and I can't even think who that was by. That was probably by Greenwood Fiberworks? Anyway, you may remember I took half of it and plied it against 2 plies of the alpaca from my own ranch, my girls Summer and Jubilee. When I finished that, I took the rest of the alpaca and 3-plied it, which I may regret, because as a 2-ply it would have gone well against that yarn with the gradient spun into it. At any rate, you can see the resulting 3-ply from my girls, and it's just a straight alpaca. It's like a rusty looking black, which is a pretty good description of Jubilee's coat. And I'm thinking it's an Aran to bulky, and that's going to make one heck of a nice cowl, would be my guess. That, of course, being pure alpaca, it's not going to have a lot of bounce or memory, which means a nice stable size like a cow is probably the best bet for it. But gosh, it's pretty. And above it you can see the rest of the gradient. What I did with that was I took the darker half of the gradient and I applied it against a silk BFL blend. I keep getting this wrong, so every podcast, every episode, you're probably hearing a different description of what I'm doing. But anyway, I've got it right finally. It was a silk BFL 50/50 from VillageSpinWeave.com. This used to be Village Spinning in the town of Solvang. And if you've never been to Solvang, believe me, if you were a spinner, you went just to see Village. But Solvang's a lovely, lovely place, sort of inland in the center of California. It's an old town mostly settled by Danish residents, and it still retains that flavor, and the bakeries are to die for. And arguing couple goes by. Well, it turns out VillageSpinWeave.com, in honor of this, I looked them up. They are still selling fiber online in real time. They just closed their brick and mortar, and I don't blame them, because Solvang couldn't have been cheap. And they did this before COVID, which was really insightful, because if they hadn't decided to retire, COVID was probably going to wipe out their store presence anyway. I can't imagine how a spinning store would stay in business through the year we've had in 2020. But nonetheless, if you look, you can see 2 plies of the beautiful silk BFL spun against the gradient yak silk. I only bought 2 pounds, only. How I wish I had bought 4. I don't think they had 4 pounds at the time, or I probably would have bought it. I had originally bought this to teach myself how to spin on my great walking wheel, Elizabeth. And what I found when I did that is I get an amazing, amazing repetitive stress injury in my upper right arm when I spin on a walking wheel. It is too bad, because that is very addictive. I really, really enjoyed spinning on that great wheel. And yes, if you're interested in buying her, let me know. And I want to actually get rid of some of my wheels now, because I'm so in love with my electric eel wheel 6.0, and I don't see myself going back to a wooden wheel, because when I pump with my feet, I get a repetitive stress injury in my Achilles tendons. Okay, so meanwhile, you can see all that beautiful wool, but I'm in the extended project of spinning singles out of all that 2 pounds. And wow, where am I? Well, I've spun, of the gradient, I've got about 300 yards. And then I have filled some 8-ounce bobbins. 2 of them are filled, and I'm working on filling the 3rd one. And I'm debating if I'm just going to 3-ply that and add it to a sweater with that yarn with the gradient. Or I'm really tempted, since I know it'll probably do what the alpaca did and come out thicker than I want it to, I'm really tempted to pull out other gradients and ply them, spin them as singles and ply them, and just do this sweater out of the yarn that I get, which would be very, very interesting, more like a DK weight sweater, and it would just have each band of it. You would be able to see the striping unless I do a fade, but you would also see gradual changes in the color because of the gradual changes in the gradients plied against the 2 plies. I think it's a very very one-of-a-kind type of sweater. I don't know if I have enough yarn or if I will have enough yarn to do a full sweater, but I'm willing to do a crop without sleeves because it sounds like just a wonderful experiment to me. Anyway, I'm toying with that as a creative idea. Let's get on to the strategy. So the strategy today is about acceptance. Now, I know I've talked a lot about radical acceptance, and most of the time when I'm doing DBT, I'm following the work of its creator, Marsha Linehan, who's wonderful. I've trained with Dr. Linehan. I admire the heck out of her. Very deeply spiritual woman. There is another guy, Lane Pedersen, who's one of her followers, and he's kind of broken DBT down even more, probably to his own convenience, which I have no problem with at all, because these things develop, as we learn and as we go. But Pedersen does one level below radical acceptance, and that is everyday acceptance. In radical acceptance, we always talk about the fact that you have to stop pretending the world's going to be fair. You have to just accept things are what they are. And it's often not your fault if you have a problem, but you still have to manage the problem. I think of that as radical acceptance. The late, great Albert Ellis, who created rational emotive behavioral therapy, one of the early branches of cognitive behavioral, he talked about this in terms of something else. That one thing Ellis loved to say was that the world is not fair and that you have to live with that. And he did not think of that as radical in the way the Buddhists do or in the way that Professor Linehan would. He simply said, stop demanding the world be fair or the world should be fair. When you're saying it should be fair, Ellis would say, you're shoulding on yourself, which is one of those terrible puns we all love. I've had the privilege of training with Dr. Ellis. It was a very interesting experience because I thought, why am I doing this? I know everything he's saying. And then I realized that's because he invented what I do. It was really humbling. But it was an interesting training. He had a mouth like a sailor on leave with a little too much booze in him, but God, he was brilliant. Anyway, it was such a privilege that I can say that I trained with him, however briefly. The important thing is, all of this comes back to the point of when you're doing work on yourself, I really think you have to start from a place of it ain't fair. And that is what Lane Pedersen would call everyday acceptance. As he says, the next time you face an unwanted situation, take a deep breath and say to yourself, this is what life is like. What he's really saying is that life is full of inconvenience and hassles and stupid problems. You shouldn't start confusing them with your real problems, okay? So I was listening to a patient the other day, and she has chronic illness, and she said, oh, I went out to Starbucks because I had to pick up a gift card for a friend. And she goes on to describe it like it's this terrible effort. And I said to her, well, were you feeling sick that day? Oh, no, I felt fine. And I said, did you get anything at Starbucks? Oh, yes, I got this delicious Frappuccino. And I said, can we go backwards a minute? Why are you describing this like it was a huge struggle? And she said, well, I had to leave the house to do something for someone else. Now let's use our reality testing, shall we, kids? You leave the house to do a favor for a friend. That's a really nice thing to do. You're a good person. You should say that to yourself. I'm a good person. But you reward yourself with a nice Frappuccino. That's totally appropriate. You're using positive reinforcement. It's a very good thing. Why are you then talking about it like it was this horrendous effort or struggle? There was nothing in the story that suggested that. Well, that's a failure of acceptance. In other words, that what she was doing was letting all these things clash and talking about doing something nice for a person as though it was this horrifying struggle. And by the way, she then went on to run errands for herself. I mean, this was all really well integrated. And I said to her, and yeah, this is somewhat fictionalized, that. But I said to her, you're talking about this backwards. That you could be talking about what a good job you did and how proud you are. That on one of your good days, you were actually doing something nice for someone else. and you were certain to reward yourself in a totally appropriate way. And she looked at me, and I realized, but this is part of her problem, is that she doesn't accept the everyday. There's a great line in one of Steve Martin's novels where he talks about this young woman who's kind of neurotic. And she goes out to a party and she has a really good time and she has fun. And she comes out thinking about it as, wow, this was an extra special good day. And in the narratorial voice, Steve Martin says, and just think, most people would have called it a normal day. That in other words, you mustn't overbuild the everyday hassles and stuff. Instead, you manage them. You know, if you go out and you do something for someone else, you give yourself a nice little reward. That's acceptance, to realize there will be little things that are a bit annoying, and you can integrate them into your life by rewarding yourself and making them part of something bigger and finding meaning in them and not getting all wrapped up. That is acceptance. That is accepting that life really isn't fair, and there are things that will be annoying in your day. That doesn't dictate today is a bad day. As my husband likes to say, how do we change a good day into a bad day? We just move on to the next thing and have it work out. He's always saying this to my son. So, okay, there you go. That is it sounds really mindlessly simple, but that is everyday acceptance, a very necessary strategy before you get to radical acceptance, which is to say, I do have real problems and they aren't fair, but I still can manage them. And I'll come back to that over and over again, because radical acceptance is a major part of therapy and of working on yourself. Put a lid on it, not really. Put a lid on it has turned into a summer routine. And it goes like this. My son loves iced coffee, and I make it for him all the time. And much is made of this, cold brew and fancy systems. Look, kids, I order McCafe. You know, McDonald's coffee. I order McCafe because that's the one we all like. We have it delivered to the house in these big canisters. I have a lovely French press, glass. My husband keeps breaking it. This time around, I bought one that has replaceable glass inserts, so we're doing great. So he broke one of my poly mugs instead. Just saying, it was the Gryffindor one. The Dr. Gemma Cognitive one is safe. I sleep with it, with a gun under my pillow. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so I every night, I heat a kettle of water on the stove after the weather has cooled down. And in my 8-cup French press, it's 4 scoops of the McDonald's coffee, plus 1 scoop of Creo Brew. Oh, that's a great balance. The coffee comes out brisk with just a back flavor of mocha. It's not overwhelming, but it's very, very good. Maybe I should put that in the notes here. I have nothing in the notes right now. But I would say every night I make that, and I let it cool on the counter, and then I push down the French press, and then I pour it into 2 giant mugs with Swerve in it, and I add cream, and I put it all in the fridge and wash out the French press so my husband has another chance at busting it. I'm not bitter. Really, I'm not. Neither is the coffee. I don't understand when I see these things online. On Instagram, it's like this parade of various ways you can make coffee with special this and special that. No, really, guys, it's not that hard. And the real secret is 20-ounce mugs from Pauly Studios. I'm just saying. I'll put the link in the show notes. That basically each of these mugs takes half of the press, which makes me think that's not an 8-cup press, even though they told me it was. Because 8 cups... Anyway, I'm going to stop doing math in my head. Oh, no, that's right. No, that's right. 8 cups should be 8 times 4, 32 ounces, and I've got 2 20-ounce mugs. Yeah, that's about right. So anyway, I just make the 2 big mugs. And in the morning, I have one, and my son has the other. And we're caffeinated to the moon. Okay, but that's what I do. The other thing I keep doing is sun tea. That when the pitcher in the fridge is getting low, I pour it off into tall cups and put it in the fridge. And everybody knows when they see those cups that there is iced tea to be had in them. Or you can just get it out of the pitcher if it's still in the fridge. But then I take the pitcher out and I drop out the tea bags, rinse it out really well, and throw in, I think it's a liter pitcher, and I throw in about 5 good tea bags. I try to keep it uncaffeinated, and I put in Swerve. I don't really measure it. It's, I don't know, about 2/3 of a quarter cup that I use to throw it in. I got tired of shoveling it in with a tablespoon. Anyway, and I put that in, and so, I'm constantly making iced coffee and iced tea, and I try to keep the iced tea herbal because the iced coffee is enough of a push in the morning. I haven't made bread for myself this weekend, but bread and cream cheese and tomatoes and tuna in any possible combination of those 4 makes my daily sandwich. And that's really about it for put a lid on it. I'm just doing what I think of as the summer cooking. Oh, and I make hard-boiled eggs late at night. Before I go to bed, I plug in the egg cooker. I have a special Itaki that I use to make hard-boiled eggs. And you just put the eggs in and close it. And the next day you have nice hard-boiled eggs. So it's pretty simple. I try to keep the food simple during the day here. Oh, shoot. Well, the Fit Desk. Whew, what a success. If you go to the show notes, you can see my mileage for Friday. I tend to do somewhere between 11 and 13 miles every day that I ride it while I'm working. I tend to ride it for my afternoons. So the first 2 to 3 patients in the morning I see in my normal study, then the study heats up, and then I go back to the Fit Desk in my bedroom and prop up all the appropriate tablets and go on the Fit Desk. The Fit Desk is great. It feels wonderful at the end of the day to get up and say, I don't have to worry about exercise. 13 miles on this, I have no idea how accurate this is. I don't have the resistance turned very high, but high enough. And I feel much better, and it's astonishing at the end of the day to realize I've been sitting on the thing for 3 or 4 hours, and that's a good bike ride. Even if you go real slow, that's still moving your legs. I do occasionally, particularly towards the end of the day, start to hop off it and just stand between the seat and the desk, and I use it as a standing desk. In both those positions, I'm able to prop my Remarkable on the handlebars and write what I need to write. Patients don't even seem to realize I'm on it. I mentioned it to one patient who I trust, and she was just shocked. I had been recommending it to her, and she said, do you think my patients, well, she said my clients would notice. I said, do you see me riding? And she was absolutely stunned. And I said, it's perfectly easy to maintain concentration and just keep going. It feels wonderful. So, mind you, I wouldn't tell all my patients about that, but it is an amazing relief to move instead of sitting for 6 hours a day. I have to tell you that the predictable health issues have improved greatly because of the Fit Desk. Now look, kids, I'm 60 years old. Y'all can imagine what happens. First of all, I have a history of irritable bowel. You can imagine what happens when I sit still too long. I'm also a runner, and I'm also high energy. So just getting out the energy every day. And sometimes at night, I will just sit down on the bike and bike out another half hour just because I feel like moving and I'm not tired enough to go to bed. It's a wonderful thing. Are there better exercise bikes? Sure there are. I looked up online. Runner's World has a really great article about the 5 best types of home exercise bikes you can buy. Their recommended number 1 is called a Yosuda, and it's about the same price as a Fit Desk. And unlike the Fit Desk, you can probably stand up on it and get down and spin hard. On the Fit Desk, I haven't tried it. I wouldn't recommend standing on the Fit Desk. I don't think they recommend it. And all the reviewers say, no, don't do that. I feel like it's very stable, but I don't want to find out if I'm wrong by falling over on this thing. It would be quite damaging, particularly since I'd probably hit something on the way down that was not me, was not the Fit Desk, and was not the floor. So no, I am not a big fan of standing up on the Fit Desk and really wailing on the bike. But I will tell you, for just occasional, I don't know, like a gentle pace with a good resistance, it works just great. I think 13 miles biking on anything has got to be good for you, no matter how gentle the biking. Also, when I work out on my own, I'll put on my exercise headphones, the Aftershocks, and I will listen to my exercise music. And in running, I will do what we call a fartlek, which is I'll get onto a high intensity song and I'll just pedal as hard and fast as I can for the entire song. It's a sprint, in other words. And then I'll just go back to normal. And it's very unpredictable. I randomize my music. And so periodically I sprint. And I feel like I'm getting a nice amount of work and a good amount of workout. And the even better thing is my body is reflecting it. I did buy a padded bike seat for it because I could. I'm not sure how much I needed it. I'm not sure how much of a difference a padded bike seat makes on any bike, to be honest. But it's nice to have it. And again, these are all links I can put in the show note. But I just love it. I realize I've gotten boring on my Instagram by posting all my mileages. So I'm thinking this week I'll save them up and do a sort of multi-picture post. Just one picture instead of like 4 or 5. On to the fluffy books. Well, I am at the epilogue of The Woman Who Smashed Codes. I deeply regret it. It's a phenomenal book. I cannot recommend it enough. It's fascinating. It's humane. It could go a little deeper, but it does a pretty good job. This is by Jason Fagone, and I really recommend it. Link in the show notes. I am also hitting the last hour of Murder on Cold Street, the 5th book in the Lady Sherlock series, and this one does not disappoint. I am really, really enjoying it. At the end, it starts getting sort of breathtakingly creepy, and I'm not going to ruin it for you. You sort of know this is going to happen, but still, it's breathtakingly creepy, and I really, really like it. By the way, I'm sitting in my Prius of Love Blue Jay, and I am drinking a Starbucks regular black iced tea with heavy cream added and monk fruit for sweetener, just in case you wonder what it is I drink as a keto fan of Starbucks. Okay, something I really like. Project Touch-Up is back. Those of you who followed the Porch Swing episodes on video last year will know about Project Touch-Up. Project Touch-Up was something I started in the midst of the quarantine. And that is when I had to live at home all the time, I began to realize the corners of the house were not looking good. So I started Project Touch-Up. It was a very simple philosophy. Just spend 15 minutes a day on one tiny project. So I would do things like notice that there were cobwebs in the corners, and I would take a big dust mop on a long pole that we keep for this, because we have some cathedral ceilings, and I would just run around the house and do all the corners. Or one day I started washing windows, and I would wash as many windows on the outside of the house as I could in 15 minutes. Or I would work on the Venetian blinds, which are made of wood and are all over the house and need to be replaced. And I would just work my way down one set on one window. And Project Touch-Up was like a miracle, that I just thought the house had a sort of dull light to it, and it began to glow. It really was amazing. And I realized suddenly that I began to integrate the Project Touch-Up stuff inside my normal cleaning. And I let it go, and I realized, yeah, it's been almost a year. It's probably been a year since I started Project Touch-Up, and I love it. So I started Project Touch-Up again this week, which was I was standing in one of the bathrooms and thought, oh, look at all the hand marks all over that white door frame. So I went and I got one of my Swedish dish towels, got it very wet, and just rubbed down the door frames, just wiped them all off, did a little bit of household cleaner, and wiped them all off. And I really, really like that. The household cleaner I'm using is an organic from Blue Land. You buy it in pellets and you rehydrate it inside a glass bottle they sell you. And so this was also part of my project, Get the Plastics Out of the Bathroom. And I'm feeling pretty good about that too, that I realize now my bathroom is much more recyclable stuff. Actually, not even that much. Mostly it's just the products in glass that I'm going to continue to use. And that's nice. The whole thing about that, Project Touch-Up and all these other things, really made me conscious of reducing the use of plastic in our home. And that's really stuck over the last year. So I'm very, very happy with that. But I would tell you, if you just feel overwhelmed by your housework, you might try Project Touch-Up. You might try just 15 minutes here and there to do things and stop punishing yourself and pressuring yourself. Well, on to the blather. First, the Eleanor update. She's doing great. Her nose is healing for the first time in several years. We're down to giving her her medication, which is an ointment on her nose, but it's very powerful medication. And we're doing it every other day, and her nose is healing really well. We have to be careful when we give her the meds, because she does tend to first lick it off, so she gets treats with it. But secondly, when she's taking the meds, you can tell because she starts chewing on her left paw neurotically. So in the days in between, she doesn't chew on her paw, and she was chewing on it so hard when I had to give it to her twice a day that she was actually limping. So we're sort of glad to see that come to an end. But Eleanor's doing great. She loves having lupus because she stays indoors with us. So she constantly sits with me, and when she wants something, she takes her long, elegant white forepaw and claws the living heck out of me. Tends to claw my leg like, hey, you should pet me. Hey, are you eating food? Hey, are you talking to someone? Why don't you pay attention to me? Hey, I could use a cuddle. Hey, don't pay attention to that cat, or that spinning wheel, or that husband, or that son. At any rate, Eleanor's having the time of her life, and she's in fine fettle. We did have a power outage last week. It was a big nothing. It was on my day off. It was 1 week ago today, and the house stayed cool, and we did great. That's the good news. The bad news, they're doing it again tomorrow when I'm working. This could be a challenge. I'm not going to take the day off because next week I have jury duty. So that's something to dread, but I just get through it these days. They never put me on a jury. Who wants a psychologist on a jury? They all think we read minds. And even if they don't think we read minds, if you put me on a jury, the risk is other jurors will think I read minds and will do what I say. So there's something we can all look forward to. Do I think I will have to go? Oh, yes. I'm sure the courts are very backed up and they're taking everybody. I'm sure there's no extensions or anything else. Maybe I'll just get it done with. The good news this week, we went down to our local mall. That was very strange and very empty on a Sunday. But we prowled around and we found out there is a new soap store and they have lots of very natural soaps. This is a place called Simon's. I think it's Simon's Organic Soaps, and it's actually down in, it looks like Studio City is their flagship. But what I like is they're making natural soaps, and their prices are completely comparable to what I'm buying online. Now, the ones I'm buying online, they're kind of family farm businesses, so I'm going to keep patronizing them. But I have to say, it was wonderful to find a local purveyor of good quality soaps, and I bought, 2 bars of a rose scented one, and one of peppermint and one of lemon verbena. So that was exciting. The other thing is they have crystals and they have essential oils. Oi, my kind of store. I could make bath bombs and all sorts of things from this place, and I can have all natural soap. Doesn't get much better than that. Finally, my boys get the last word, not Minerva, that we had Father's Day yesterday, and it was charming. We went down to the mall, as I mentioned. We took the beloved husband to his favorite sushi place. While we were there, I actually finished an event in Harry Potter Wizards Unite, so, bonus points. He was really cool about it. It took me about 5 minutes to finish. But we had a lovely, 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 huge sushi nosh, and we went over to the mall, and we spotted turtles in the mall. Their turtles are very tame and were coming up when they saw people at the edge of the pond and begging for food, which really blew my mind. I wonder how often they actually get fed by the tourists. And they were just sunning themselves on the side of the pools. It was really marvelous. So there's some pictures in there. But at the end of the day, I thought Minerva doesn't need the last word. The boys do. We had a lovely day. Then what did we do for dinner? Oh, we went over to Habit and had big salads, my husband and I, while my son had some grilled cheese or something indescribable that only a kid would eat. And we came home and we realized we just had a really great time being out with each other. Now, what did we do at the mall? Well, actually, not much, but initially we went over to the Boot Barn, the Western boot store, because my son needed really functional boots for around the ranch. So I said, no, let's go to Boot Barn. Let's not go to the mall for that. I know exactly what kind of shoes he needs and where to get really good quality boots for a good price. And I would have bought him cowboy boots, but we realized that the heavy duty kind of work / hiking boots were the best solution, and we got him a set. And then we went over to Runner's Lane, which is a local running store, a chain of 2 stores, one up in Palmdale, one down here in Valencia, and they're great. I can't recommend Runner's Lane enough, but you have to be very local to use them. And we got his shoes fitted, and he turns out to have done really, really well in New Balance. Now, my hubs and I, we like New Balance. I like Hoka's. He likes Brooks, which I used to run until I met Hoka's. We can't wear Nike, neither one of us. We can't wear Adidas, usually because the heel support isn't sufficient for us. What was interesting was how much my son pronates. That is, he turns his feet inward as he walks. I do that. My husband does that. People do it when they're overweight. My kid's not overweight, but he just does it. He's kind of naturally somewhat bow-legged. So we're really glad we actually had to get him heavy pronation shoes, but it's a good fit. So we're planning on taking him down to Roadrunner, which is further down towards the city in the San Fernando Valley, and getting him fitted for orthotics, because that'll give his shoes a longer life. And I love my orthotics. And you could see when we put him in one set of shoes we didn't buy, you could see him pronate in them just walking away from us. When we put him in the New Balance, you could see it lifted him upright and straightened out his walk. And that's what you want, but you really need good insoles to make that happen. You can do that on your shoes, but you're going to kill them really fast. A good running shoe should last you 300 to 500 miles. Until I found these custom-made orthotics, mine lasted me about 105. Now they make it about 250. So we need to do that yet. But anyway, we all went out, and my son had the best Father's Day of his life. He had a good time getting all the new shoes, and we had a great time eating out and just being together. And that's about it. Work goes well. I'm very busy. I have no problem getting patients. I'm really oversubscribed. And it's just been very, very happy. I still have one intake this week, and then my caseload is maxed out, but I think I'm probably going to graduate 2 people in the next couple weeks as well. So, we'll see how it goes. But I'm booking through, and work is great. And everybody's good. So I think that's about it for this week, which is good because it's getting really hot in the car. And I don't think you want me to melt before episode 34. But everything's going really well, and I'm down in Santa Clarita, and I'm watching most people wear masks in and out of restaurants. That's making me happy. And by drinking this tea with heavy cream in it, I have avoided my craving to go get chocolate frozen yogurt, which even without added sugar is still going to have too much carb for me. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I'm debating if I want to go pick up little bits and pieces here and there, but I don't think I do. I think I'm about ready to go home and just process all this and edit and get ready for the work week. So it has been simply a delight to talk to you again. I have to tell you that I just have a warm place in my heart right now because of Chris H's message with the coffee, where she basically said, I didn't know you were back, it's so great, blah, blah, blah. And other people have said that. Yeah, I have to say, it is good for the ego to go away from podcasting for a few years, come back, and feel really warmly welcomed. And I am enjoying that. I'm also enjoying the fact that I'm enabling certain people who shall go nameless to get a fit desk. But I'm so in love with mine. There's a few things you think of as really, really great purchases you've made. One of them has to be the Instant Pot for me, but another one is certainly the Fit Desk. I cannot believe what a happy thing that has turned out to be, and how much that has improved my life now that I've owned it for about 8 or 9 days. It's amazing. So there we go. I'm pedaling off into the sunset. Please remember, we are still in a pandemic, and there are still going to be problems because there are states where fewer than 35% of the eligible adults are vaccinated. So please remember, though, wherever you live, that kids still are not vaccinated, kids under the age of 12. So if you're going to wear a mask, that's who you're protecting. Please consider that seriously, because I don't know about you, but I happen to like a lot of kids under the age of 12 who deserve the protection. In the meantime, don't forget to wash your hands. Don't forget to wear your mask. Don't forget to get vaccinated. Don't forget to socially distance, because at the end of the day, I'm really asking you to stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.